Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
It's recording now.
How are you?
Good. Okay. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Today's Wednesday, January 3rd. And I'd like to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Mary Hogue, you want to lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have a request from John Cattell to change. He has to be somewhere and he's got about an hour's drive. And I'd like to change the agenda to make John's section first.
So moved.
Okay, so can we move, the vote is to make his John Cattell's section to item number 1. All in favor, any public comment? None, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Unanimous. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you moving me up. For you, what is being approved, approval is a virtual net metering interconnection agreement. This is a project that's been going on probably since 2018. A solar field that's actually physically located in Woodbridge. It's Alco is the company that is actually the one who owns the solar array. The town is involved because we have the meter in our name in the town of Woodbridge. If it's connected to UI, we get credit from UI at about 23 cents a kilowatt hour, and we're paying Alco 9 cents a kilowatt hour. So the deal itself for the agreement has been done. This is just an agreement between UI and the town for interconnection. But we have our meter there. Does say Woodbridge? Yes, it is Woodbridge. Any other questions? It's been reviewed by council.
I have no questions. Do you have any questions? Any questions? Public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. That's my cooperation.
Good to see you.
Okay, the next item 3, to consider and act upon the minutes of December 11th, 2023, December 14th, 2023, and December 18th, 2023. Can I have a motion? Okay, any comments on the minutes?
Can I, it's the 11th and 18th?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to abstain from the 11th and the 14th.
Okay, yep.
Vote for the 18th.
Okay. For the, I guess, then we need to, can I have a motion to break out 11th?
I think we just can give our unanimous consent that we're fine just addressing them one by one, right? Just a vote.
Yeah, unanimous to address by one by one. December 11th, all in favor, say aye.
Stay.
Okay. December 14th, all in favor, say aye.
Stay.
And December 18th, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous on 18. So item number 4, just to notice that Gilbert Donovan or Chip Donovan has resigned from the Ethics Commission, and we want to thank, he's moved, temporarily moved to another state, so he's going to be a resident of another state for the year. I want to thank Chip for his service. Item number 5. These are reappointments to hear and act upon the following reappointments. Affordable Housing Committee, The first is Robert Elwanger, 85 Sespe Pond Road, term 11/23 to 11/27. May I have a motion? Okay. Is Robert here or on the line? Robert, can you hear us? You want to go off mute?
Okay, yes, I'm here. And thank you.
Do you want to say a few words?
Sure. I've been actively involved with the Affordable Housing Committee for the past 3 years, largely as a member of the public until this year when I filled a vacancy. And I very much look forward to continuing my work with the committee. It's important work that needs to be done. And I look forward to your approval and to serving another 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your service. Any comments or questions?
Yes, just want to thank Robert for serving. It's an important committee.
Great.
Um,
For stepping up.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much, Bob, for doing this for another term. Number 2 for under Affordable Housing Committee is Stephen Grothwall. 132 Adley Road, term 11/23 to 11/27. May I have a motion? Is Stephen here or, oh, hey, Stephen, would you like to say a few words? Just introduce yourself.
Just thank you. And
Up at the microphone, I believe. Yeah. We don't have a microphone anymore, but.
I just wanted to say thank you and hope that we all have a healthy and happy new year.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for your work on this important committee. Does anyone have any comments?
Stephen's been serving for a very long time and has been a valuable member of the committee. So I appreciate you stepping up and again and serving our community in that capacity.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Next is the Historic District Commission.
Got a recommendation to take them both at once.
Sure. All in favor for taking, do we have a second? All in favor for taking both nominees for James Bohan and Arthur Gravanis at the same time? All in favor say aye. Aye. Is James and Arthur here?
Yeah, hi, I'm Art Gravanis. I'm attending by video. I've served a 5-year term. I thoroughly enjoyed being on the HDC, and in 5 years, I can count on half of one hand how many meetings I missed. So I'm a contributing member and would very much like to serve a second term. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your service. Is James Bohan on the line?
Yeah, I'm here via WebEx. Again, I'm completed my first 5-year term, which I've enjoyed very much. Looking forward to your approval, and I'd love to serve another term. It's a wonderful committee, wonderful people on it, and most importantly, the citizens of Fairfield are so collaborative and cooperative with preserving the very special historic districts we have. I look forward to your approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arthur. Any comments from the public? Seeing none. First of all, I just want to make the point that this requires RTM approval. All in favor say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much for attending and thanks for stepping up again.
Thank you.
Item C, Land Acquisition Commission. Would you like motion to consider all 3 nominees at once? Okay.
Second, can I
Okay.
just ask a quick question? Are these are new appointments or reappointments?
These are reappointments.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
So we're good for considering them at once. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Adam Goodman, Tara Hawley, Cassandra Marshall Cassandra couldn't be here. She has a conflict. Would Adam and Tara like to say a few words if you're on? Oh, Sarah. Oh, Adam. Adam's here. Okay, Adam.
There's up there too. Adam Goodman. I am excited to work on this third term of mine. I was almost two full terms. I was, I think, a month shy in the first term, so I get the privilege of working on another term. So I'm excited to do that. I think it's a good. I have an interesting perspective because I'm also the land protection specialist for Aspetuck Land Trust. So I look forward to working with the town acquisition commission again, and hope to preserve some more land.
Thank you. Tara, you've got your hand up, so would you like to say a few words? Oh, you're on mute. Tara, you're on mute if you can hear us. Oh. We can't hear you, but should we vote? Okay. Any comments from the public? Seeing none. All in favor of Adam Goodman, Tara Hawley, and Cassandra Marshall being reappointed to the Land Acquisition Commission, say aye. It is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 6 is appointments. 6A is the Affordable Housing Committee. Number 1 would be Jacqueline Page, 83 Fairfield Beach Road, term 11/23 to 11/27. May I have a motion? Okay. Oh, Jackie's here. Yeah.
Thank you for the appointment. I got involved in the Affordable Housing Committee when our church was considering the Masonic Temple 830G development. So my pastor asked me to get involved, and I've really enjoyed it. I've attended about 75% of the Affordable Housing Committee meetings since 2020, and I look forward to continuing. They do great work.
Thank you. Thank you for stepping up, Jackie. Really appreciate it. I love your background is amazing. Any comments?
I just want to ask, so typically, are there people who step down? They usually are listed, people whose term ended or they resign, they step down for a reason.
Well, I contacted both members who were not reappointed, and I let them know. I thanked them for their service, but these are the appointees that I wanted to. I did not reappoint them for a second term.
Oh, did they want to though?
Neither said that they wanted to. I mean, I called them and thanked them for their service and didn't hear. Yeah.
Because typically we reappoint people if they want to have that opportunity.
We do, but we, and I could talk about this at a later date. There was really a significant imbalance that's been created over the last couple of terms in party affiliation, and this particular one isn't so much party affiliation, but it's time to start bringing back some balance between Democrats and Republicans and unaffiliated. So right now the gap it was about 25%. It was more than it's ever been, and I think the message that sent was just a little bit unsettling to me. On this particular committee, I think we need some skills that were not necessarily present with all of the members there. So I really saw the skill set of these two individuals and thought it would be really helpful for the committee.
So I know that former select woman Lefkowitz used to talk a lot about this. I actually, over the last 4 years, put the appointments in the newsletter, and I had shared this at prior Board of Selectmen meetings, that for as long as I've been involved, and I've been involved since 1999 in town government, typically there were, the appointments were pushed forward by the party. So the Republican Party town committee would send their appointments, the Democrat town committee, and I opened it up to the newsletter to have just regular citizens apply, regardless of if they were affiliated with, they could have a party affiliation, but they weren't party people, so to speak. And to be honest with you, there were times when Democrats were rejected because they weren't a member of the EDC, and I just thought who had a wealth of knowledge in a particular area. So I'd like to see some evidence that there was some wildly imbalance over the last 4 years that didn't exist in the prior administrations. I mean, if you look back over the last 20 years, the ratios were the same. I don't think there was, I mean, I'll just pick the library board of trustees, for example. There's not a single Republican on that board. There are some boards that have more unaffiliates. So I think it's something I'm happy to have a discussion with. I never really saw an issue with it. I know that Selectwoman Lefkowitz found it something she was very interested in and talked a lot about over the 4 years and abstained from pretty much probably 50% of the appointments. But I always took her ideas into consideration, and so I think we should probably discuss that more.
We should definitely discuss it more, and I hear you. I have to say, I feel that it should be, it would be great if it were completely nonpartisan, but we have certain rules about maximum. Most of the boards, there's a maximum number for one individual party, but 8 years ago, under the public, under the Democratic control, when there was a Democratic controlled Board of Selectmen and the prior administration, I mean, I went back and looked at all of the records going back, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. They were always sort of close to the same percentages for Democrats and Republicans. And for some reason, and I'm not saying it's because they're Republicans, but when the Republicans took control over the Board of Selectmen, that gap between Democrats and Republicans went from 1% or something like that to 10%, and then it was 15%, and under your administration it went to 25%. So whether there was, it's very possible that was not intentional. It just was what happened, and it may be because certain people applied and others didn't, and I can't really, causation and correlation correlation does not imply causation, I guess is the way. So I'm just saying that's what happened. So I am very dedicated to opening up the process. What I have said and what I want to do is create a sort of a digital volunteer exchange where people can submit. We're starting to look into potential programs to do this. People can submit their resumes and also check off not just a submission for one particular board or commission, but maybe a range of things that they're interested in, and then we'll have an easily searchable record. Right now, it's a little unwieldy. We have some on Excel, some a little bit on a Google Drive, a little bit is just pulling out hard copies of resumes and going back a couple of years. But these two particular people came through submissions over the website, and I look at what I think we need on the Affordable Housing Commission, and I think these were the types of skill sets that I would like to see. One of them happens to be married to a state rep. His name's Brian Vahey. I did get an email from someone saying they thought it was conflict. That is not at all a conflict. Brian Vahey, and we can look at his resume, we can talk about it. He has extensive finance experience, which I think is a big part of affordable housing. And he also has experience with affordable housing in Bridgeport, working for an organization. And Jackie Page has her background working with in racial equity and justice is just impeccable. So that's really what I wanted, and I agree with you. It should be nonpartisan as much as possible within the rules. It should be open to people from all over town. We should be going out to every corner of town and inviting people to submit their resumes. I believe it should be more, what are you interested in? I mean, someone who's interested in affordable housing, well, we now have a fair rent commission. If there's not room on affordable housing, we should be looking at the Fair Rent Commission, which we still have to constitute. There's things that, you know, if you're interested in certain things, it may cross over to different boards and commissions. And I think we can make that more transparent and make it so that if someone gains a credential, they can go back in and update it. There's certainly a lot we can do with that, and I'm committed to that.
I appreciate that. I just, if you could share this information that it's been so lopsided over the last 20 years, because my understanding was there was always a majority of Democrats on all the boards and commissions under a Democrats administration. And there was a slight shift when a Republican took over, which is typical.
There was a massive shift, and I have all the
Love
data.
to
I will,
see that,
I will,
but I would
I'll put in the backup next for next
That would be
month.
great. And I would also like to comment that the appointment applications always went to the entire Board of Selectmen. When I was in office, everybody got it, Nancy, myself, and Tom, all at the same time. And I haven't gotten any since.
Okay, yeah.
So we should all be on it, and we're supposed to all have the opportunity to review those.
I talk to Nancy all the time, and I get what you're saying, although Nancy would say that she was never asked to, her opinion was, she may have gotten it, but her opinion was never considered.
I don't want to necessarily, we have a full agenda in terms of going back and debating the politics of the last board and what a former selectman said. I'm not really sure it's the best use of this board's time. I do agree that I think that we should all be getting this information, and if you're not getting it, then I would ask the administration to make sure that happens moving forward, because we should all have input. I very much appreciate these two candidates that are before us for this particular committee, just for their skill set, their dedication, their knowledge of the issue. And I'm looking forward, Mr. Gerber, to ways that you're going to make this process streamline it, just for Ms. Kupchik and I, in order to be able to review the resumes, and also to increase the reach of bringing new people into town government. You know, we've all knocked many doors, and we know how much talented people are out there that could really add to the fabric of our community and to our town government. So look forward to moving this forward. Look forward to seeing the spreadsheet of just past historical breakdown in our backup, and ready to vote if you guys are.
Okay, any comment, anything else? Any comments from the public? Seeing none. Jackie Page, Jacqueline Page.
He didn't, I don't think we let, was Mr. Vahey?
Oh, we're doing them together. That's right. Yeah, no, we did vote. Brian Vahey, are you on?
I am. I'm on WebEx.
Oh, hey, Brian. Would you like to say a few words?
I would. Madam Selectwoman and Mr. First Selectman, thank you for consideration for the Affordable Housing Commission. It's an area that I've been involved in on a hands-on sort of basis since 2009, mostly in Bridgeport or in statewide type issues, but I would gladly chip in here at my local community. I think shelter and a vibrant community go hand in hand, and figuring out how to get the right balance is something that we struggle with all the time. But I'm glad to work on this committee if you appoint me, and yeah, and I'm glad to see Mr. Grathwall get reappointed, because he and I did some affordable housing work in Bridgeport together not that long ago.
All right, thank you so much for stepping up to do this. I'm really excited to have a money guy on this, so you can help work through some of the financial issues related to building affordable housing, hopefully, and give some advice on that. The other comments?
Just think
Thank you, Brian. Any comments from the public? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so thank you, Jackie and Brian. Thank you so much. The next is B, Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. Sarah Mason, 15 Fife Road, term 11/22 to 11/26. filling a vacancy for Mary M. Tomei Strito, who resigned. Can I have a motion?
Second.
Okay. Sarah is here. Hey, Sarah.
Just wanted to say that I'm really excited for this opportunity to serve on the Bike and Ped Committee. I have 3 little kids, 7 and under. We're active walkers and bikers in our neighborhood to Riverfield School, and they'll eventually go to the high school and middle school too. I've been working with the town on traffic calming and safety improvements on Mill Plains since March 2022. So I've given public comment at the Police Commission and also at the 2 RTM meetings in support of the Safe and Livable Streets Ordinance. And throughout this experience, I've built relationships with other road safety advocates and I've learned a lot about what our streets could look like and could feel like, which is a lot safer. And I've learned a lot of times it can be achieved by simple changes. So with the passing of the ordinance in October, I'm eager to use what I've learned and the relationships I've built to help improve Fairfield roads for vulnerable users, our pedestrians and cyclists, who are also our children, neighbors, and ourselves. I think there's a lot of untapped potential for Fairfield to be a safer community for residents to feel empowered and supported to help affect that change. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I would like to say your advocacy for Mill Plain Road improvements was recognized by a lot of people in that neighborhood and recognized by myself as well. So thank you. Any comments?
I thank Ms. Masons for stepping up. I did have an opportunity to meet her while campaigning, and I appreciate her efforts just to increase safety on Mill Plain Road. Having come off the Board of Ed, we spent the last year hearing how important it is for children to be able to walk to school, and if we are going to promote that, we want to make sure that it is safe as possible. Had the opportunity to walk to school day to Riverfield. Ms. Kupchik was there. It was wonderful to see so many people out and about, and we want to make that the norm, bike to school. So I appreciate the advocacy in the past and the advocacy moving forward, because I think that we really important issue for all age groups. Having participated in some of the age-friendly Fairfield meetings as well. Our seniors are also just concerned about safety when they're out biking and walking, and looking forward to the work of this committee moving forward. So thank you for volunteering.
Just want to thank Mary for her service on the commission. I know it's sometimes duplicitous, the commission, because it really is they really need, like, the police have to come, the engineering department comes to their meetings, DPW. And so I know that when we had a lot of joint meetings, a lot of the items at the Bike and Ped Committee, you and I actually discussed this before, regarding a lot of the items that the Bike and Ped Committee were put forward were things at DPW, the traffic safety unit with the police department, and the engineering department were already working on. So, maybe there's a way it would be a little bit more sort of productive. I know some of the members felt like they were just sort of like talking about things that were already sort of in the pipeline, or were already being part of the Safe Streets initiative that was in place for a while. So maybe there's a way for it to be a little bit more, because I know that, a lot of our department heads are required to go to so many meetings at night for all various things. And I think maybe it would, if there's a way to sort of regroup it and have it be a bit more of a productive sort of interaction or collaboration with our town departments that really actually implement all these things, it might be more helpful.
I agree with all of that. Any comments from the public? Sarah, thank you so much for stepping up. All in favor, say aye. Unanimous. FairTV Commission, item C. This requires unanimous approval of Board of Selectmen and RTM approval. Suzanne Title, 43 Hunter Lane, term 7/23 to 7/26. This is to fill a vacancy for Anne Marie Lagnisi, who resigned. May I have a motion?
Second that.
Is that you, Suzanne?
I'm Suzanne.
Hear
Nice
us?
to meet you. Yeah. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
You want to say a few words?
Sure. So I'm sorry, I'm WebExing from Orlando. I'm running a few races this weekend in Disney World. I've been looking forward to getting involved in the town and saw this as something that might align with my skill set. I'm an associate dean at NYU School of Medicine. Part of my role is overseeing the graduate school, but the other side is that I oversee research communication. So I have a communications background. I used to be a publisher of a science journal in Boston. And so I thought maybe this, the FairTV Commission would be something that I could provide some of my skill sets to and learn about it and figure out how I could improve getting the word out to Fairfield about what's going on.
Thank you, Suzanne. I have to say your resume was
Sorry, it's a science CV.
mind-blowing, and I was so thrilled to see it, and so thankful for your willingness to participate in this. Any other comments?
No, just thank you for stepping up.
Oh, thank you for considering
Thank you
me.
for stepping up. Agree, the FairTV always look for better ways to improve communication to our residents, and FairTV has been a lifeline for many residents. So I appreciate your willingness to make it even better. So thank you.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Unanimous. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thanks for stepping up.
Thank you.
For the Historic District Commission, full member, this requires RTM approval. We have George E. Clark Jr., 174 Old South Road, term 11/21 to 11/26. George was an alternate, and he's moving from alternate to full member to replace Christopher Shea, who was elected to the RTM. May I have a motion? Okay. George is here, right? Yeah, there. Yeah, we just.
Yes, I really enjoy working in the HTC. It's a fabulous community. We really try to make a difference. We want to keep Southport and Fairfield and the community on Greenfield Hill and the Old Post Road as they are today as much as possible. And I think we really work hard. We probably ruffle a feather here or there every once in a while, but we really try to keep the community with a look and feel and streetscape that is today. So I welcome a term transitioning from alternate to full commissioner, and look forward to working with the committee. Great group. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George, for stepping up to do this. Any comment?
Thank you for stepping up, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, George. Unanimous.
Thank you.
The next item is Human Services Commission. Katrina R. Cash, unaffiliated, 130 Fairchild Avenue, apartment 203, term 11/23 to 11/27. May I have a motion? Katrina, are you on?
I'm on. I'm joining you by phone as I'm traveling back to Connecticut. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. You want to introduce yourself and why you?
Yes, I'm Katrina. Yes, I will. I'm Katrina Cash, and I've been a resident of the town for nearly 7 years, and I have been looking for ways to get involved. I have an extensive background and history of volunteering and serving on committees in different municipalities where I have resided in the past. I served on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for the Board of Ed for the town of Trumbull for several years when my younger son was a student there. I've served on various boards, Alpha Community Services, LifeBridge, formerly known as Family Services Woodville. I'm very active in my local church here in town. And I have an extensive background as a social worker, 30 years of employment with the state of Connecticut. And I think my skill set aligns with the Human Services Commission, and I'm looking forward to serving and being a part of the town.
Well, I'm so thrilled you are doing this, Patrina. Your background is incredibly relevant. Obviously, there's other aspects to this, but the social work aspect is really important. And any other comments?
Oh, good.
I agree. I think her background would be a value add to this committee, and I appreciate you stepping up and look forward to meeting you in person.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Unanimous, Patrina. Thank you so much. And if you're driving back,
Look forward to
you can start driving.
Look forward to meeting everyone in person. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Item F is Solid Waste and Recycling Commission. This also requires RTM approval. Ronald Blumenfeld, 1185 Stilson Road, term 1122 to 1126. This is to fill a vacancy for Kristen Itella, who resigned. May I have a motion? Okay. Ron, can you get up and say a few words?
I can.
May you? Will you get up and say?
Thank you very much. Just like to say that I'll be honored to continue to serve the town. Solid waste and recycling doesn't sound like the sexiest group to join, but I think it's very important work that gets done, and I've been very interested in this type of work for quite some time, and I'm happy to be able to continue to do that in this role. So I'm looking forward to taking this spot. Thank you.
And people should know that Ron is an author and has written books on Fairfield and other, but I think this is actually a pretty sexy commission, and it's extremely troubled right now, and so there's a lot of issues that I'm sure you're going to have to work through with so much recycling is coming through single stream and being burnt ultimately, and yeah, I can't wait to hear the great things that you do. Any other comments?
Sure. Do you have some background in solid waste and recycling?
Staying by Fairfield
Okay.
and task forces where I serve now.
Right.
I've got a lot of experience personally in trying to do the right thing in recycling, and I think we all struggle with that, and I hope reduce the struggle at least as part of one.
So I think I can't remember what meeting, sometimes it's someone else recently. And I was sharing with her that I would recommend you reach out to our DPW director, John Marsilio. He has a wealth of knowledge regarding solid waste and recycling. Served on state boards. Hartford testified for the environment committee. He's given input statewide groups that are doing it. This is a really big issue in the state. There's some serious things that need to change statewide that are impacting all the municipalities. I think it would be really helpful for if he came to the commission in great presentation, because he has really knowledge that's it's incredible. And it would be, I think, really helpful.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All right, thank you, Ron. Thanks for stepping up. This is going to be very interesting. For information only, item number 7, reappointing is first selectman reappointing Carol Landsman to the Housing Authority, I'm sorry. Item number 8 is the Bigelow Center MOU to hear, consider, and act upon a memorandum a memorandum of understanding between the town of Fairfield and RW Solutions, Inc. concerning meals and services for the Bigelow Senior Center for fiscal year 2023-2024, as recommended by the Director of Human Services. May I have a motion?
Second.
Lee, how are you?
So this before you is the MOU to continue our food service program for the seniors. It's our congregate meal program. It's funded by the Older Americans Act, and that grant goes to the Southwest Connecticut Agency on Aging, which puts out to bid for the region. 12 towns for this one. The congregate meals, which are the meals that are at the senior center 3 days a week. This SWACA, the Agency on Aging, was it out for bid. The winning contract went to RW Resources, and this is the MOU with RW Resources to run the lunch program. So they operate. We don't have an involvement in the program other than hosting. They collect money, they do the reservations, they make the food, they serve the food, they clean up the food, and we provide a good environment and seniors.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
No, I just want to thank you, Julie. I want to thank you for all you do and the amazing work that you do for our seniors. And
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I look forward to having lunch there a couple of times. You used to serve lunch daily, right? Yeah, and now I'm sorry, how many? It's
3 days.
3 days a week. And was there ever a thinking that you might bring it back to daily, or is that something that was like sort of on the docket for you to think about? Or
We do every other month we do a survey of the lunch program to find out if it's meeting the needs of the seniors. I know that in the MOU, it says that they'll do a survey every April, but we do our own because we want to see exactly that. Is it fulfilling the need? Is it bringing the people in who need the lunch? Is it meeting the requirements for seniors? And what we're finding is that there's not a demand to increase it back to 5 days. It was busy and crowded pre-COVID, but it was also a different food service provider.
right.
And right now, 3 days a week seems to be working. It's a program that's really important, but the population that attends it is not as large as it once was. It's for, today there were 6 people for lunch. So
Right.
increasing it doesn't seem likely this year, but we'll revisit it. And if there's a possibility to add additional days, we can work with the food service to increase that.
Thank you. Any questions?
If you wanted to provide just coffee on the alternate days per week, this MOU wouldn't preclude you from doing something like that, would you?
We do offer coffee. Mondays through Fridays, we have coffee until 11:30 with in the breakfast week.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more comments or questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 10, delegation of authority to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the town attorney. Resolved that pursuant to section 5.2C1 of the town charter, the Board of Selectmen hereby delegates contract making authority to each department head, as well as first selectman, for contracts that are for a duration of less than 1 month and involve the expenditure by or income to the town of less than $10,000. This delegation of authority does not eliminate review by other persons or bodies where required by the town charter, by ordinance, or by general statutes. May I have a motion?
So moved.
second.
Ms. Phil, hey, would you like to explain?
Sure. So this basically quotes the charter provision on contracts. The practice going back a very long time has been that this just says that it's delegated. The provision in the charter doesn't say that the department heads automatically have this authority. It says the selectmen may delegate authority. The only way that the selectmen can act is by passing a resolution. This probably happens at some point in the 90s, or I don't know when, but no one seems to know whether it ever happened. So I thought, let's have a resolution just to make it clear that it's been delegated. So that's what's before you. This is, you read the charter, this is the same. You're delegating the full extent of authority that you can under the charter to the department heads. From a practical perspective, that makes sense, because otherwise, if, the library wants to buy a book, they've got to come to the Board of Selectmen. That's not, the point of this provision, or the point of the charter provision on contracts. And the language in there about how it doesn't eliminate any other review, that's also in the charter. And is that if some other body has to touch the, before it's approved, like it's an acquisition of real estate or requires an authorization or money to be appropriated, they'd have to go through the process to satisfy that.
So may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this isn't about buying a book. This is about a contract and negotiated only for a month. Right? Is this what it's?
So this is what the charter says. The charter says that
we buy books all the time, but that's not a contract to buy a book. They have a budget and they buy items. But what I'm saying, I don't remember how many contracts. I don't really remember any contract that was only a month long, under a 10,000.
Yeah, there are some, there aren't many. But, I was meeting with a department head today and they had one that was fixed duration, $9,800. So that would fall within this. So it wouldn't have to come to the Board of Selectmen. There aren't going to be that many. You're correct. There aren't going to be that many contracts that fall within this. If it's a year-long contract, it's $5,000. Charter, it doesn't let us delegate that. So that's not being delegated. It's limited.
Yes.
That's what the charter is until we change it.
Right. But this doesn't impact Board of Ed, right? This should
not impact Board of Ed. Correct. That's a good point. It doesn't impact Board of Ed. This body does not have contracting authority as the Board of Ed contracts, just the other. And I see it's like, I'm smiling because as well, right? You don't have authority for that, so that's still with the Board of Ed. Contract specifically, but it's not been executed.
Was it small thing?
Multiple meetings today, and I don't remember.
So it's like under 30 days?
I'm not going to get back to you about that.
Okay, I'm just curious because I don't really recall too many of that. I don't really remember even an instance. Yeah. Very good.
But Attorney Pierce, can you elaborate on, the books that you mentioned that if you're buying a book, it's a purchase order, right?
Yeah, it says the charter. It talks about any contract. So it's really, really broad. All contract making authorities with the Board of Selectmen. This will allow some department discretion to spend money if it's in the operating budget.
Well, they do now. Just to be clear, we never had a book come before us. It's like 4 years to approve. I'm just saying that they each have their budgets and they spend out of their budgets. Now, small contracts, I don't know, maybe say, for example, if we had like a dumpster contract for some specific thing, or I don't know what the instance would be, but it wouldn't be for books.
Yeah, so books was just an example. I'm not expecting books
But-
to come,
but let's-
but just so let's not fixate on the term book.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just to
You said it, well.
Just to give you an example of how an absurd situation that we don't want this board taking up for.
Well, I agree with you.
So, I can say that in the very limited time that I've been town attorney, there are a number of, the expectation has been a lot of stuff doesn't have to go to the Board of Selectmen that really should go to the Board of Selectmen. And I'm not being critical of anyone, we just have to follow the charter. So that's all we're trying to do. This just allows us to delegate the maximum authority we can. Let's have flexibility that we can give them. That's what this is.
Very good.
May I just ask a question? A purchase order that is not part of, or if it's not part of a larger contract, but a one-off, is that a contract?
Usually yes, because usually it will have associated with it.
Exactly.
purchase order forms a contract.
And I think the town has gotten into trouble in the past by not going through the process of approval for certain things that should be considered contracts, and they did it through another way. And I do think, and you're definitely aware of this, Selectman Kupchak, about the new purchasing policy that it's still sort of in draft form. It's been approved, but we're working through implementing that now, and there's probably going to be some changes. But we need to definitely, as we implement the new purchasing policy, and as we will reopen the charter at some point soon, hopefully, to revisit the $10,000 number. A lot of these terms are going to change, but a lot of these amounts will change. But for the time being, we just want to make sure that we're following the charter. And where there's ambiguity, we want to make sure that we've removed that ambiguity, because we don't want people to think they have to send us purchase order for the book. So now this sort of clarifies that. Not that they ever thought they did, because they wouldn't have anyway, but they probably should have for some of these things, and we don't want to be bogged down with that. So we're sort of making it official that they have the ability to approve certain things.
No, I think it's smart, and I never thought that half the contract should come before us, but I get your point. I mean, I think the prior administration had violated this agreement when they hired I think it was a reputation defender or something for like $25,000 without going through the Board of Selectmen. So I can see.
I hate that. Yeah,
And make sure that it's buttoned up.
Yep. That's the kind of, actually, that's a good example that should not happen.
Great.
Any other comments? Any from the public?
Ian Bass, Lally Boulevard. I'd just like to make a suggestion. I think this is a great policy. I would just like to make a suggestion that there be some type of oversight, be it by a person, a departmental person, or a committee, and it's done on some type of a frequent basis, so that we don't find ourselves in the embarrassing situation that we recently did, where a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years later, we find out that things have been going on that should not have been going on. And I just think that some type of oversight should be established. Thank you.
Thank you. And Laura Devlin's here. Good.
Which you could just maybe answer for me. Do I need to do this formally? Can you refer what section of the charter that this is included in? Executive branch members.
5.2C1.
Compensation of executive.
I'm sorry, it's 6.2C1.
Okay, executive.
Oh, do we have a?
Yeah, so I think it's a.
Okay, thank you.
Laura Duff.
Just want to be clear about what we're.
Probably should amend the.
We need to amend it?
She's correct, it's 6C1.
6C1?
Sorry, 6. It's actually 6.1C1. Yeah, sure, 5.
I mean, I hate to do this, but do you think we could table this to the next meeting and then actually have a copy of the charter at each of our tables, out of our places, and kind of have a more fulsome discussion? I mean, you mind? I mean, would it be that big of a deal if we just moved it to the next meeting?
I mean, I have a copy of the charter if you want to look at it. I have a hard copy. I just would prefer not to wait on it, because I know department heads would like this to be acted on today, so they can do that.
Yeah, I'd like to say, as of now, the standing order to the department heads is basically every contract has to go through one of the purchasing authorities, myself or Tulin.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we should go through the purchasing department. I mean, Adam handles that, but.
Could you just explain again the urgency for this? Because I thought in your introduction, you said that it's just something to clarify that it's never used, but then you just said the department heads want it right away.
Yeah, it's not that it's never used. There are things that come up. There's no urgency. There's no agreement that has to be acted on. We could delay it. It's just that every time I tell a department head that every contract right now has to come to the Board of Selectmen, they get very unhappy reaction. So to make their lives easier, I would like to do it. There's no magic about it. It doesn't have to be today. If the board doesn't want to act, it doesn't have to act. If department heads.
How often are these meetings?
The next meeting is the third.
Do you want to take a 5-minute?
If you don't have to act.
Take a 5-minute recess to review the charter.
Yeah, would you like a 5-minute reset?
Can I make a motion for a 5-minute recess just to review the charter and then we can come back to it?
Yeah. Want somebody make a copy? Have someone make a copy so you can see it? Can all look at it?
You wanna?
Just look.
Yeah,
Motion to for a 5-minute recess.
seconded.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
But I just want to understand what.
Out of,
We're back.
oh, we're back.
Zooming.
5 minutes. So, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this item number 10, delegation of authority, to the next regular meeting. Maybe a second. Okay, any comments? I think it's a good idea. Selectwoman Kupchak mentioned that the citation was wrong. So if someone were to look this up from what was online, they may have read the wrong paragraph. The other thing is, I mean, this will certainly give me a chance, as many things will be coming before me, to see the types of things that I am delegating to the department heads. It's going to be a lot of signing over the next couple of weeks, but I'm fine with that. Any other comments?
We've been happy to support this today because I do see the value of just for operational efficiencies of having the departments have this leniency, with the caveat that the purchasing department would be keeping a close eye and the town attorney reviewing these contracts. But I agree that since it wasn't properly noticed to the public, it makes sense to postpone.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, all in favor of postponing till the next regular meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous. Item number 11, legal fees. To hear, consider, and act upon a request from the Sasko Creek Neighbors Environmental Trust, Inc. for the payment of legal fees to Bertram Moses C. for legal services that benefited the town of Fairfield in connection with Connecticut Siting Council docket 516. The recommended payment for the consideration of the Board of Selectmen is $37,711.11, which would be paid from legal services budget. Just to repeat that, $37,711.11. May I have a motion?
Second that.
Okay. Bill.
Yes, so there was a request so I think most people are familiar with the Siting Council docket. There was an application by UI to locate overhead transmission lines through the town of Fairfield to replace what's there existing, and it has devastating consequences to the town as a whole and our community. So the town's been actively fighting this. There's also a neighborhood group that's been actively involved in fighting it and ramped up quickly and hired Bertram Moses. And at the time that they were hired, Bertram Moses did some work that the town directly benefited from, including locating experts, which the town ended up retaining, and also preparing some documents for the town in litigation, and kind of taking a lead role in some of the early phases of the matter. So that's just by way of background. There was a request from the neighborhood group, the Sasko Creek Neighbors Environmental Trust, Inc., for the town to consider reimbursing half of Bertram Moses' bill. It's not the recommendation. We looked at the invoices and came up with what we thought, or my office came up with what we thought was a fair number, given work that's done that the town benefited from. So that's where the $37,711 number comes in. There's no obligation to do this, but the town benefited. The request is in the backup along with the invoices that the neighborhood group sent.
So I think we may not have a legal obligation to do this. I believe we have a moral obligation to do it. The Bertram Moses attorney was on the scene, quickly compiling, data and doing a lot of the work that we would have done had we started work earlier. And I feel that it's only fair. So I'm really in favor of this. Any other comments?
I agree with that. Having listened to the Siting Council meetings, I am thankful that the neighborhood organization took such quick action on this. That's important information on the record that the town attorneys could then, pull from during the trial and during cross-examination. I am somewhat just concerned about our legal budget. I did reach out to the administration. When the budget was built, we were not factoring in needing to fight UI. And the fiscal year 24 budget for legal is $565,000. paid as of yesterday was $329,776.80. So I think not necessarily for this, but just to Mr. Gerber, given where we are in the year and the other needs of the town, I think that we should probably revisit the legal budget. I would ask for an estimate of any additional costs that we foresee needing to encumber to fight UI. If we need to go back to the Board of Finance for additional appropriation to support this work, we should do that sooner rather than later. Just want to be cognizant. We are, 6 months left of the year. We are in terms of budget.
I really appreciate your bringing that up. If the Siting Council votes, in UI's favor, we will be challenging that, and probably there will be significant amount of legal work to do if that happens. And we are currently just back of the envelope. We're probably closer to 400,000. We are going to surpass our budget in the not too distant future for legal. So what I need to do is talk to the Board of Finance about, and talk to our finance department about whether or not there's internal transfers we can make or how to deal with this, because there's really no way around it. We are going to surpass this amount because no one foresaw United Illuminating and the sort of potential devastation that they could on our, inflict on our town, and we do have an obligation to fight this any way we can.
Agreed. And so I would say that there was always sort of an emphasis, mostly from the Board of Finance, about keeping the legal budget at a certain amount. I thought we should keep it higher. The town we're a big town. We have a lot of legal issues that go on every single day, as you're probably learning. And yes, the town should be fighting UI if we lose the Siting Council. It's something I had committed to doing, and I'm glad to hear you say that you're going to commit to that as well. I do want to thank Steve for his amazing hard work on this. He and his wife have just been champions, and Mario is a fabulous lawyer. Really enjoyed working with him and our attorneys in meetings, trying to prepare and sit through all those Siting Council, which were very frustrating. I'm sure Steve would attest that, UI is obviously a large company. I would say that I had good conversations with the president right before I left office, and he was willing to go and meet with me and each of the impacted neighbors and try to work on an agreement. And I think that's something that should still be tried. I think it's valuable to try to make some kind of mediations on some of this stuff. You have no idea what you can get. It's always worth a shot because obviously fighting a company of that significance in court is going to be quite expensive. But
yeah, I'm not sure we probably don't want to talk about legal strategy. I don't.
But I think, working together is always a smart idea. But I 100% support giving the money to the group. Would even have supported giving more.
Okay. Public comment. Anyone? Megan McCloud has a hand up.
Yeah, hi. I'm tapping in virtually from WebEx. I just would like to say, Megan McCloud, Reading Road, Fairfield, Connecticut, as a member of another neighborhood group in town that has arguably advocated for things that also benefited the town. I'd just like to put on the record that I think we caution a very slippery slope with setting a precedent with the town reimbursing neighborhood groups for legal fees. And I just say that in a broad brush because there's no doubt there's a difference in priority of different issues that impact different areas of town in a different way. But that being said, I do think there should be some type of a control or an oversight or at least a discussion before an ad hoc decision about, reimbursing a neighborhood group for legal fees in an advocacy position is just brought upon at a Board of Selectmen meeting. I'd like to see that there's an additional review process so that other organizations don't just all think they can get in line and apply for town funding to come out of the legal budget.
Oh, I actually normally wouldn't respond to public comment, but I think it's really important that people understand, if you read the item, we're not reimbursing reimbursing the Sasko Creek Neighbors Environment Trust, but we went through the detailed legal fees, and we are paying Bertram Moses for certain things that they did that we would have paid them to do had we started earlier.
I mean, wouldn't that have to be a contract first, I guess is what again, not asking for an answer, but just putting it out there on the public record, that I just think the public is owed an explanation as to what can be expected if another proposal from any other neighborhood group comes before the town, because there's a lot of arguments that can be made for a lot of different issues in town that certain groups may want to seek assistance. We won't even call it reimbursement, although in effect it is a reimbursement because we're eliminating that portion of their liability for the bill that they contracted with Bertram and Moses. I think there should be an additional discussion about what threshold we're going to put on that moving forward.
Okay,
because
thank you. Any other comment from the public?
I mean, Alyssa, it's an interesting opinion, and one I think is obviously worthy of consideration. I think though, and I don't know, was all this posted online, the bill and everything?
Yes.
Yeah, back up.
Just want to say that, a lot of times their lawyers were meeting with us in the conference room. So, they were helping the town to a certain extent as well. As an extension of our attorneys, they were assisting us. They were collaborating, let's just say. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Mrs. McClough makes a good point.
I think it's a fine point, except in this particular situation, I think they literally did work that we should have been doing as a town, and
we were doing it together. And as you could see in these meetings, we were sitting in rooms together. And this is a lot of correspondence between the town attorneys working on it and the Sasko Creek Neighbors. And they were actually in conjunction with a lot of other interveners who were helping them. So I know, I know Bertram Moses was working for a lot of different interveners as well.
So Selectwoman Kupchak, if you look at behind the bills, there's a schedule of the time entries that shows the analysis that my firm did to figure out what was fair. Yeah. So it's not that every time entry.
Yeah, you're looking at the total bill.
Only certain entries were credited to the extent that they benefited the town. And, I think the Oziks could explain more, but it went well beyond your collaboration, the level of assistance or work that Bertram provided. They drafted documents for the town. They located experts for the town that the town ended up engaging. It really is work that the town
was not otherwise doing.
It didn't do. So that
well, they were doing it all together. I mean, I was sitting there with them, and just to be clear, though, Bertram Moses was also contracted by other interveners, not just this group. They were contracted by commercial businesses who were also impacted. So they had a lot of clients. So the town was working with them, but obviously I think we should pay it. I understand Megan's point. I think it's a fair point and something we should take a look at in the future, maybe writing up something that sort of outlines what our town's obligation is in matters like this and when we will move forward on it. But I personally think that we should do this.
Okay, should we?
I just want to highlight this is I totally agree with Megan's comment. This is an extremely unusual situation. It hopefully will never happen again to reimburse a neighborhood group for work. So it would be my hope that we would not have to do a policy because this really shouldn't happen. Sure.
Well, it's a highly unusual situation for sure.
Selectwoman
I
Vitale.
appreciate the public comment, but I agree. I think that this is extreme circumstances. I appreciate that the town did get involved and provide legal services, but I think that those who were following from the start, that this neighborhood organization was definitely leading the charge and doing the work, and the town was very fortunate that that work had been done early on. We were a little bit late to the game, and we'll be supporting this, and the impact of this project, if it moves forward, the impact on the grant list, on our historical districts, our environment, extreme circumstances in this case. I want to say extreme measures, but maybe just out of the norm. So thank you for putting this forward, and thank you to those the Sasko Creek Neighborhood Environmental Trust, Inc., who are on the line. Thank you for your work and for your continued advocacy.
Okay, ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, our Attorney Pierce. Thank you, Ozix, and anyone else from Sasko Creek that's on. Item number 12, the Penfield Pavilion update. To hear an update on Penfield Pavilion from Race Coastal Engineering and to provide a general update on the project. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay. I'd like to just start this off by recapping where we are. The Kupchik administration found a notice of violation from FEMA the first day in office, that in November 2019. That notice of violation required the town to take the beach elevation under and around Penfield from 11 feet to the natural grade, which is 8 feet approximately. Taking the beach elevation down to the natural grade of 8 feet would expose the pavilion foundation, which we call the horizontal grade beams, and they were sitting at elevation 11. So going down to 8 would expose those grade beams. These massive concrete horizontal grade beams cannot be exposed. During a big storm, these beams would become an obstruction. Storm surge, which would surge up against it, could topple the pavilion. FEMA's NOV, Notice of Violation, NOV, required the town to remove horizontal grade beams from being an obstruction. At the same time, the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, or DEEP, required the town to remove contaminated fill from under and around the pavilion caused by the two administrations ago and the Julian fill pile. The town did many tests by taking core samples and found 8 hotspots that contained materials like PCBs that had to be disposed of in specialized facilities. The town is one of the facilities that the town is using. The one that we're using is based in Michigan, and a significant portion of the rest of the fill, besides those found in the hotspots, is Connecticut regulated waste that must be disposed of, but can be done so much more easily at less expense. The town developed a plan to dig underneath Penfield, build a new horizontal grade beam foundation several feet lower, and cut away and dispose of the old horizontal grade beams. It was finally decided to remediate the 8 hotspots first before starting construction on the foundation, because the prior administration didn't want the construction personnel on site while hazardous material was being dug up and moved. The rest of the fill, about 3 feet of it, could be removed during construction. Recently, Race Coastal Engineering had an engineering group check the load-bearing calculations behind the horizontal grade beam plan. And the firm, I believe this is Joseph Seabot Architects, or the engineering firm that did that checked the load-bearing calculations, found that the plan for the horizontal grade beam was faulty, and that during a storm, there was too high a risk the beams would snap. So the The foundation plan that was presented to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM, that plan had to be changed because there was too high risk. But not only that, the finding also meant that the current horizontal grade beam structure carried the same risk. That is, the current building with the horizontal grade beam structure, even though it's at elevation 11, and the sand is currently at elevation 11, also could have the same risk of the grade beam snapping during a serious storm. So a few months ago, the team went back to the drawing board, developed a new plan using helical piles, which is a different design altogether. And at the end of September, the town, through its construction manager, Bismarck, received bids to construct the foundation and remediate the contaminated fill. Total cost of the project increased by $809,476 after receiving the bids. That is the increased amount. The town, this time, that would be me and Eli Gazal, but it's prudent to add an owner's contingency of 5% to that. Based on the total revised estimated cost, that amounts to $620,474. That brings our total requested increase over the original $11.6 million approved in March 2023 by all the town bodies. Increases that amount by $1,429,950. A total of $13,029,950 for the project. Regarding timing, the plan when I came into office was to start construction at the end of January. The plan today is to start construction at the end of January. As was explained to me by the former chief administrative officer, the facilities accepting hazardous materials, they have quotas. Their quotas were full for 2024. And there was nowhere to take our remaining hazardous material. So we have one hotspot remaining, and that is being remediated this month, early this month, and will be taken to, I believe, Michigan, or to whoever will accept it that can accept it. So here we are. It's still the plan to start construction in January. However, with all that said, what I said very publicly is that I was not willing to sacrifice coastal resiliency for the whole town in order to preserve a pavilion. So I needed to know through a flood study that was promised in March 2023, and $100,000 was put aside to do that study. I needed to know what the results of that study would be. So updating previous studies, it actually ended up being significantly more than updating previous studies, because we often look at 100-year storm when we look at coastal resiliency based on FEMA standards, I guess, for reimbursing costs. But we really felt the Flood and Erosion Control Board, and I concur, felt that a 10-year storm, a 25-year storm were very relevant when you're talking about a huge grand list. A portion of our grand list is in the beach area. We need to know what is going to happen during lesser storms, because during a 100-year storm, it's too easy to say everything gets wiped out. Why bother? And I don't think that's the attitude. That's certainly not the attitude that I have, and I don't think that's the Flood and Erosion Control Board's attitude. So we wanted to see what would happen during sort of a more frequent storm, which is a 10-year storm or a 25-year storm. And I believe we have someone from RACE here who's going to give us a presentation, and hopefully you can talk about Devin Santa, hopefully what a 10-year storm actually means in reality, and 25-year storm. We all use those numbers, and I'm not sure we all always know what they actually mean in reality. So we had $100,000 set aside for this study. It wasn't done, and it wasn't completed until really, I think, a week ago. And I found the discussion very, very useful, and I think we thought that it should be given today to this group so that we all get a sense of what a 10-year storm means if we lower the beach and keep it at 8 feet. I was also really encouraged to hear that I believe that should not be the intention to keep that beach at 8 feet. In fact, it should be the intention to, in front of the building, and re-engineer the beach back up to 11 feet. And that once the notice of violation is disposed of, and FEMA is confident, is comfortable and signs off, we should be thinking about how to engineer that beach back up to 11 feet in front of Penfield Pavilion. And I think we're going to hear from Race the potential consequences of not doing that. So I think I'm going to hand this over to Devin Santa from Race. Thanks.
So if you wouldn't mind, I would just like to make a few clarifications to your remarks. It's on the town's website. We kept a very active Penfield page up. So just to be clear, in January of 2019, the town submitted its first appeal to FEMA on the decision. And then in June in 2019, they denied that appeal. August of 2019, the town submitted a second appeal to FEMA's decision. June 21, the town was notified that FEMA denied the town's second appeal. That's when we found out about the letter that the town had gotten prior to me coming in saying that the Penfield Pavilion was being built out of compliance with FEMA. So we had put the $100,000 into the overall project costs because we heard what the residents said. We heard what the Flood and Erosion Board said. But FEMA was very clear in hundreds of hours of meetings that they had certain criteria. Listen, we didn't like it, but it is what it is. And now if there are additional things we can do after the project is completed, we were always open to those. And that was the reason for the studies, so that we could see and take a look at what they have to offer. And then if the town is willing to fund those matters, whatever they're going to cost, whatever those projects would be, we would have open board discussions and they would, Race has done studies back from 2015 and none of those were ever put on any capital plan, 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. So I think it's good that we are doing this exercise, but I'm glad to hear that that you did have your meeting with Race and that you come to the same conclusion that we have to comply with FEMA and move forward with the project. And I'm looking forward to hearing about the updated study. If it has some 10 or 15 year, that's awesome. And maybe it'll be some, I'm not sure, but if there's going to be some sort of calculation of what kind of costs we're looking at down the road. And obviously FEMA would have to sign off and DEEP and everybody who's very in control of our shoreline and has all the regulations. But thank you for bringing Race here. It's nice to have them here and the community enjoys listening to their presentation.
So I just want to clarify one thing. If you comply with FEMA's NOV that you found in the desk drawer on your first day.
Oh, not first. The town was appealing the NOVs, but we weren't aware that they had received a letter saying they said that FEMA was wrong, that they had did everything within compliance. What we found much later on was a letter from FEMA to the first selectman that actually said, and we put this out and presented it to all the boards, that in the middle of the project, they were notified that they were building the project out of compliance with what they had originally submitted to FEMA. That's the letter we found much later on. Okay. So we actually thought these appeals were justified and real and that we had a fighting chance. But it wasn't until much later that we uncovered this letter that said you changed the entire plan and without even telling us, and you're building it wrong, stop building it.
Okay. My point that I wanted to make was what I was never clear about up until last week was if we keep a building there and it remains under FEMA regulations, when you have the building there, you have to lower the beach to 8 feet. That's one decision. I knew that was a possibility to get rid of, to dispose of the NOV. The other possibility would be to knock the building down and remediate it that way. And that would be another viable decision to comply with the NOV. I never really wanted to the second option, but for me, if the second option of knocking it down to comply with the NOV gave us clear room to then re-engineer the beach back up to its 11-foot height under very different rules. There would no longer be FEMA. If that was the only way to get the beach back up to 11-foot height, beach elevation, I'd be willing to sacrifice the pavilion in favor of a whole coastline of resiliency. And what I now understand, I believe, is that it's not either or, that we have an opportunity to keep the building and we have a path forward to re-engineering the beach to 11 feet. That had never really been discussed, at least not publicly before. And so I'm quite optimistic now, whereas I wasn't before. But I think, that choice was weighing very heavily upon me, because for me, the responsible thing to do is to put coastal resiliency first. So with that,
I 100% agree, Bill. And it was actually talked about extensively at the meeting with me, that the beach needed to be lowered regardless of the building being there.
Selectwoman Vitale.
As the, one selectman who's not had the luxury of being in some of these meetings, selectmen, I'm very much would like to hear Henry's on this. Move this discussion forward, and the public can have the most up-to-date information, so we can where we are. I did, misunderstood a little bit. I thought that the prior administration found the notice of violation on day one. So thank you for that clarification, and thank you for being here.
Of course. Thanks for the opportunity. Should I start?
You should start. And should we turn the lights down, or?
I don't, whatever.
We can see, but yeah.
I don't know if I have a way to switch the slides or if I tell someone to switch slides. Okay. Thanks, First Selectman. My name is Devin Santa. I'm president of Race Coastal Engineering. We're a specialized company that does waterfront engineering. Been in business for 25 years, based out of Stratford. Myself, I'm a Fairfield resident for the past 10 years. So this is in my blood in both ways. We've had the good fortune of working for the town for a number of years on a number of projects. Our involvement in the Enfield project, the structure proper started with the deal when the problem. We're taking the town with coastal engineering analyses and interpretation. Regulations post discovery of the issue. So I was asked to be here by Eli and give a bit of a presentation of what we've done to date, and to give a little bit of, I suppose, information on how these statistical storm events are determined. So when we're discussing things like 100-year storm, a 10-year storm, what those in fact mean. Basically, those are, we call them in the industry synthetic storms. They're not based on an actual event, based on statistical modeling of potential events. So if you look at a 100-year storm, it's statistically has a 1% chance of occurring on any given year. Depending on building codes, usually require you to build structures to meet either 100-year or 500-year criteria. If you get into softer solutions like beach nourishment or living shorelines, then that criteria can vary, almost more user specific or site specific. So Eli, you can switch to the next slide. when we look at design storm events,
I pressed it. It's changed up. That's great. It's just a lag.
When we look at these design storm events, we're piling on a few different things. We're looking at water level and wind speed at the height of a storm. So you're compiling for a 100-year case, you're looking at 100-year wind, you're looking at a 100-year water level, and you're looking at that 100-year wind blowing from a worst case direction. So these storms, this is how FEMA models everything. We spend a lot of time doing modeling that's identical to what FEMA does for their mapping for map revision processes. So we follow the way that when FEMA calls a 100-year storm, we follow the same mapping protocols. That said, you're stacking a 100-year wind, a 100-year water level at a worst case wind direction. Statistically, it's less frequent than a 100-year, but that's the nomenclature that's used and it's accepted for mapping. Of interest and note, if you look at an event like a Hurricane Sandy, it probably came into New Jersey near 100-year water levels. In Connecticut, in Fairfield, it ended up being somewhere between 50 and 100-year water level, and the wind speed was like 10-year or less. So it's probably the most dramatic storm that most of us have seen, but it wasn't a 100-year storm by the definitions that FEMA would have us follow, and are commonly accepted. So moving along.
Wow, that is a.
When I get near the.
There we go.
I'm waiting for your page turn over there.
Let's give you a signal. This area, and probably a lot of you probably seen this before, this is the flood insurance rate map for the beach area. And it shows everything in blue there is in a special flood hazard area or would have some level of inundation during a 100-year event. So that's right off the FEMA map. Again, I don't think this should be a surprise to anyone. So skip forward. As far as our current involvement or current contracts, we have two separate contracts. One, we're looking at the Penfield Pavilion on a site-specific basis of what the influence would be of removing the sand on the beach from elevation 11 to elevation 8 to see if there was unintended consequences or hazards of that occurring. Because you could say, well, there's other flooding sources. So if the land gets lower, that doesn't necessarily cause problems. If other places are lower still than that. But we wanted to look at it a little bit more in more detail to determine what that risks and what those risks and hazards would be. So we looked at modeling of the situation where Penfield had the current beach grade at elevation 11, and then we looked at it with the beach grade cut down to elevation 8. We looked at that through the 100-year cases to see what the difference would be. Right, and our conclusions right off the bat from what we've found in this case is from a macro perspective, a town-wide perspective, that breach is not necessarily an influence. There's going to be multiple flooding sources that's going to allow the beach area to flood. The low topography we're going to get into in a minute at South Benson to the north of the area, Lantern Point, and the dike at the fire training station allow the floodwaters to enter. So there would be breaches regardless of the elevation of the beach at Penfield. That said, it's just not common accepted practice to put breaches in dune lines or create low points that could create a funneling effect. So there is in fact a micro influence of currents, water funneling through that lowered section. So that would allow floodwaters to enter. Again, it would equalize from other areas as well, but it would cause scour and channelization in that area, in that lowered section at elevation 8. So the overall effect of the entire beach area likely would not be influenced. The issue at the particular project site would be adversely impacted. I don't know if anyone can make any heads or tails of this from that distance, but what that's showing, this is a model time step in our synthetic storm that we created. Peak of the storm is 1 day, 3 hours. So this is an hour and a half before the peak of the storm. And what it shows on the left-hand side is that no breach has occurred at Penfield as of yet. But on the right-hand side, you can see the inset on the right-hand side, that greenish color on the inset. Those are current velocities, and it's showing waters flowing through that breach at the Penfield location. The reddish color landward of the beach is showing that it has flooded already. So the flooding sources, again, from either the Lantern Point, the fire training station dike, or from the north have occurred. But now we have a breach point that's been added. We have another time step here, which is 45 minutes after the proposed condition reaches. And it shows we're still are just not reaching at the Penfield site. So that Penfield site's a bit of a higher ground currently at the elevation 11 compared to the south and the north. Moving forward, there was a study that the Army Corps of Engineers did, and when we look at like flood analysis and options to control flooding, there's the solution that the Corps has really adopted and that's accepted practice is creation of levees. If you're really looking to take areas out of special flood hazard areas, this is done in Stamford, this is done in London. It's been involved in the recertification efforts on those levees. Those are massive structures that run through the entire waterfront of sections of those cities, and they're associated with pumping stations to pump out floodwaters that would either, if the levee's breached, or from rainwater. So they're massive, massive undertakings, and the Army Corps did study this in 2019. They evaluated 7 concepts. They came up with one that basically shows, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a blue line that runs from up by Ash Creek all the way to the west of the sewage treatment plant. And that's a wall ranging in height from, I think, 7 to 12 feet. And that's what it would look like. So imagine you're getting down to one of your road ends at Birch or Enfield. There would be a wall there that would be about 12 feet tall. That would have either the road would end and you'd have another way to get to Fairfield Beach Road, or you'd have mechanical openings and closings. The other thing of note there on the core study, all the structures highlighted in red are everything that's left outside of that barrier. So that project in 2019 dollars was $550 million cost estimate. And that cost estimate didn't include the legal aspects of land takings, which would be many to weave this structure through private properties. So I wanted to put that in there of context of what a full protection of the beach area would conventionally look like. Our next scope of work was we're working with the Flood and Erosion Control Board to look at something less than that 100-year 1% protection case. And the charge to us was, well, we recognize that achieving that is difficult, but is there a lesser level of storm that we could seek to protect against that would be better than doing nothing? And we can advise residents of particular elevations to build to protect against a particular storm. So at that point, we looked at developing models for 10-year, 25 and 50-year event. At this point, we've completed the model run of the 10-year event to look at where the breaches are occurring and the criticality of the breaches. So when we look at the 10-year event, and it's 10-year event, 10% level occurring on any given year. It's a water surface elevation of around 8 versus the 100-year, which would be around 10. So still it's a substantial storm, and again, piling up the wind and the water levels in two directions. What we find in that 10-year case, not even accounting for any sea level rise, we do breach in 4 locations, starting an hour and a half prior to the peak of the storm. The first breach is up at Riverside Drive berm in South Benson Marina. Our second breach is by Ash Creek berm. And then we breached at the Penfield Pavilion. We were modeling in the host case, the elevation 8 beach case. And adjacent residential structure, and then a 4th breach at Lantern Point. So we have those 6 breaches in that instance. So we can see right off the bat that we to even achieve a 10-year level of protection would be perhaps a worthy goal, because we're not even at that at present. The next graphics, I think we could skip through relatively quickly, Eli, if we're allowed to. Yeah, you could. The next graphics here, you just pass this one. Are just graphs. That's showing that those 2 breaches to the north. That if we skip ahead, it's a more detailed view of that. But perhaps put it up to any questions or comments. The rest are just graphics. Process of.
Yeah. Ask the board if they have any questions.
Oh, you're done? You're not going to go through the rest of them?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions?
So, thank you.
Of course.
Race has been really helpful throughout this whole process, giving good data to us throughout. While we were also looking at FEMA, they had done some other additional stuff before even. Because coastal resiliency was an issue. We were talking, when I was a state representative, I had deep down here, we were talking about coastal resiliency. I remember walking the beach with Rick Grauer back then when I was a state rep. And a member of the Department of Environmental and Energy and Protection, to talk about different things we could do to try to mitigate wave action and all of these different things. There's a lot of different ideas, but this is very helpful, I think, because I know a lot of people were feeling like or weren't really kind of listening to that. It wasn't just the pavilion that we were dealing with the violation. It was the fact that the soil underneath it, which was contaminated, but also was raised up more than previously there. And that there was all these different issues going on. And I know that there was a lot of concern from residents about if we were complying with FEMA, we would be subjecting them to additional flooding. And, the information we received from you and from FEMA, they were saying the same thing you're saying, like there's breaches everywhere, all across the shoreline. And so this information, I think, is helpful not only to the town, but also to the residents who live, in the coastal area, just having a better idea of what we're, what we're sort of dealing with. And there's so many studies and things that have been done over the last, I want to say 15 years that, I mean, you just said it, 500 million, it could even be, or even way more than that. I mean, these are serious things that, we're gonna have to look at. The town does have a serious amount of capital projects with matters, but this is very helpful. So thank you for taking the time to share it with the board.
Yeah, I think to build on one of your comments, I think it's important to note there are other flooding sources, but to leave that at elevation 8 does have a consequence that would need to be considered.
Right. Thank you.
Go ahead, yes. Christine.
So what would the recommendation be in terms of mitigation strategy in the short term around Penfield? Knowing that we're going to address the notice of violation, but there's still concerns about flooding.
Well, knowing this as being involved as I have been through the appeal process and knowing that FEMA is really feet into the ground here, it seems that they're going to accept nothing less than cutting grade down to elevation 8. That said, in my experience, I don't know of any auspices that FEMA would have to stop you after you clear that violation through your own zoning regulations and Coastal Area Management Act of filling that back to elevation 11. That FEMA is not a regulatory body, so it's not like you would need to apply to them. This is a violation matter that needs to be cleared. So I would think that my recommendation would be off the bat to rebuild the beach as rapidly as possible in a legal way back to elevation 11 thereabouts, so that we don't create a breach point, because as bad things will happen, even if there's other flooding sources, we've still created a funnel point that each repetitive event is going to scour a bit more and scour a bit more, because it's just sand. So that would be my recommendation too.
Right, just to add to that though, DEP does have authority over that, because we had discussed that when we went through the project, and FEMA said, yeah, you can always apply to nourish the beach or make changes, but you have to go through DEP, because they do have regulatory authority shoreline.
Depending on where the sand's being placed,
You have to,
the coastal jurisdiction line.
yeah, they have authority.
The coastal jurisdiction line is below 8 though. So what ends up happening, there's co-jurisdiction where the state is from coastal jurisdiction line towards the water, and then the municipality is from mean high water in.
Right.
And there's an overlap, but the state also has comment authority of your own zoning applications. So the state would be involved.
No, they told us that we could apply after, address the NOV to do nourishment and changes. I know back when I was a state rep, I asked them, could we do what Massachusetts was doing? Their Department of Environmental Protection is much lax than ours.
Yeah.
So when there's a storm coming, they actually allow their municipalities to bring in truckloads of sand, put them as a barrier along the beach. And we had this whole debate when I was on the shoreline task force legislature. And we were asking, repeatedly the DEP, and brought them down here and said, well, why can't we do that? Why can't we protect ourselves when we know a storm is coming? So
It's challenging.
they're very challenging.
That said, I don't think they would take an exception to that approach. And the other thing is down at Jennings, we were working with the town on the project where we pumped 25,000 or so yards of sand on the channel on the beach. The state was fully supportive of that from a beach nourishment perspective.
Right.
Christine?
Just speaking about moving sand, we're going to be moving sand as we move forward with this construction project. Obviously, we're going to get the contaminated fill and anything that needs to go out of there sooner rather than later. But would it benefit the town to hold on to some of this sand? And can we do that, or to be used?
I think that's a question for Eli. Yeah.
Well, through you to town engineering.
Sure.
Eli Zoll, Town Engineering Project Manager. Yeah, we do plan on keeping the sand, stockpiling the sand that is clean, tested clean, until we can use it at a further time or using it at another beach. So we will be retaining the sand.
We will be removing the soil once this construction starts. The Connecticut regulated waste will be removed, and we'll be able to put some of the sand back. Because we're going below 8 initially. So the question really was for me, if we knock the building down, completely remove it, is there a difference in our resiliency plan really for that neighborhood? Because we have to take one neighborhood at a time. So one stretch of beach at a time. If we've got 6, and it'll be a different story if we're looking at a 50-year storm or a 25-year storm. But I think it's very, very relevant to be looking at a 10-year storm. More relevant, really, for most people day to day. So, with how they feel about the value of their homes and what they'll be facing when there is a 10-year storm, if we can plug all of them or most of them, and that's a project that's got to happen over time, but then we will be protecting against a 10-year storm somewhat, or a lot. My concern was that having the building there would preclude us building that beach back up to 11 feet. That question has not been answered, at least, or at least sort of answered, with some caveats until last week. And I was concerned that we would have a better path of rebuilding that beach to 11 without a building there. And either way, we're going to have a beach at 8 for a period of time, 8 feet for a period of time until that NOV is signed off on. And once it's signed off, that it's been, taken care of, we will then immediately start the process of restoring resiliency to that area. And we should be also at the same time looking at creating more resiliency in other areas. There are a lot of people that have a lot of ideas about more expensive structures, and we should look at some of them or all of them and then figure out which ones we should do. But that's not going to happen. I mean, we need to restore resiliency as quickly as possible after the NOV has been resolved. So, I appreciate this view of it very much. I don't recall seeing this view for at a 10-year storm level. So for me, it's a bit of it's enlightening. So appreciate it. Any other comments? Yeah.
Not necessarily for race, but just in terms of Penfield, not that I want to go back and revisit things that were said in the past, but just at some point, I think there was an estimate made by the town that just building a brand new structure would have actually cost less than what we're doing right now. Has that been revisited at all in the last year since this project was moved forward?
It has. So the chief administrative officer communicated through a letter to FEMA, citing 4 options that the town was looking at. One was to knock the building down and build it up to current code, and that was $10.1 million. And I think about 11 million to do the project with the horizontal grade beam project, not the helical pile project. And that was about $11 million. So at the time, which was, was that a couple of years ago, or the estimate was that it would be cheaper to rebuild it. I know there was some concern on the part of the administration of the process that might ensue had we knocked it down, that there might be a building committee. And you know, it might take a long time. We lose the revenue during that period and all that. I was interested in knowing what that would be today. Eli Gazal actually asked the engineers to estimate the cost of doing the knockdown and rebuild, and it had gone up by like 70%. So with materials and inflation and all that, that's no longer really a viable alternative.
Thank you. Just want to get it out there for the public. I don't think I have, timeline, just in terms of project completion, just for, you know, for Parks and Rec and for planning for this building, providing that things move forward.
You're following the same timeline, right?
Well,
Right
I don't know
now,
if it's changed at all, you know.
the only, as far as I know, and you know, I think hopefully we do need to do an update on it. When I came in office, the plan that I heard from the chief administrative officer was to start construction the end of January once his final hot spot was remediated. That plan is still in place, but whether anything's changed after that, I don't think it has, but actually Eli could answer that. Yeah.
No, it hasn't changed. Schedule has not changed. We still plan on starting at the end of January. Once all contracts have been approved, the project's gonna take 10 to 12 months since then. So we plan on only losing one summer at the beach area and open up for the summer of 2025.
Thank you.
Eli, can you just confirm, is it still that the RFPs and all of that, those will expire if we don't move forward in the middle of this month?
Correct. We have asked them to extend for another 30 days so the contracts do not expire. But yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
This is not a voting item, but I think we should take public comment on this. So if anyone would like to speak.
Just curious.
You would want to stand, yeah.
Address for the record.
Yeah. Oh, name and address for the record.
Steve Banco, 940 Flintlock Road in Southport. I'm just curious because it's counterintuitive to me as a layman. Why did they want the elevation of Penfield lowered from 11 feet to 8 feet to begin with? That would seem to me to fight more flooding. Why was that?
This has been discussed a lot, but you know, if Race or if Eli, if you want to take that, I mean, I think the answer is because.
Well, it was built up during the prior building of the Penfield. We're really not supposed to answer questions during public comment, but it was built up in violation of FEMA's regulations.
But if the question is why would FEMA care, then I'll let you know. Yeah, no, you're right. We're not supposed to answer.
Long story short, the horizontal grade beams are placed in between the natural grade and the base flood elevation, which to FEMA, that's considered like a no-fly zone. There should be no structures within those two areas, and the grade beams are placed within them. So it's a requirement based on their.
I guess a legitimate question is why, if you have a higher beach, even though you build it up, why would they want you to make it lower? And the answer is they look at the natural grade, and that's how it's just sort of how they feel it's evolved naturally over the years. And you shouldn't monkey with that, but you know, they don't always enforce it. So they're enforcing it now.
Historical, and I know during our meetings, they said what you said, Eli, is that if the waves hit those gray beams, they smash the building apart and they become projectiles and smash into the houses behind it. That's what they said while we were here.
That would happen more.
It would be more devastating.
If it's at 11 feet.
But again,
Yeah,
the historical elevation of that beach is 8 feet. It was built
I'll
up.
talk to you afterwards if you don't mind, because we're not really supposed to have a Q&A. I really screwed that up. Should not have allowed that, but definitely.
I always do that.
I'd like to get your contact information. We can do that. Any other comments, Becky? Won't be answering any.
Hi, this is Becky Bernal, Chair of Planning Board. I also live at 2000 Fairfield.
This one is the newest.
Okay.
That's it.
So I have two comments. One, thank you very much for doing this work. And I want to make sure that we continue to do the complete study because I think we are going to learn more as we go through the rest of the study. We've done just part one of this study, which is one part of the modeling. And I think it's going to be critical to do the 25-year modeling and also sea level rise modeling. So I want to make sure that we don't try to make decisions now because we're not at the place or ready to do that. The second, actually I have 3 comments. The second comment I have is I think DEEP does actually have a regulation where you are allowed to do a temporary dune 28 days before a storm. You can stockpile, if you have stockpiled sand on your property, you can bring it out and create a mini dune. So that is something that we could do. And we should maybe check with FEMA and DEEP whether they would allow that if there was to be a storm during the construction. I don't know whether they would or not, but that would be a protection measure for that we should at least explore. And then the third comment, I'd just like to know if there's any option to revisit the 8-foot number exactly, because every document I read from FEMA said 8 to 9 feet. They never actually, I read all the documents. They never actually said 8 feet in any of the documents. It was always the natural grade of 8 to 9 feet, which means they recognize that the grade wasn't all 8, it was up and down. And that would just allow us to have some of the sections of the beach be 9 feet to begin with and still be within correcting the notice of violation. So I don't know if there's an option to go back and use their language and do it to their 8 to 9 feet, because that is what they used in all their documents. So thank you very much.
We'll talk later. Any other comments? Oh, let's say Israel. Stephen Bang.
Did your kids?
Trust Becky. That's my.
Alyssa, you're on mute, Alyssa. Alyssa, you're on mute. Well, let's go to the next person. Ian Bath.
I am Bass Lally Boulevard. I live directly across the street from the pavilion. Been there since 1988. I think I probably know more about what happens at that beach and at that pavilion than just about anybody else in town, including town employees, because I'm there 365 days a year unless I'm on vacation. I want to thank Devin, Santa, and Race Engineering for pointing out something that has been bantered around this town for years and years and years, which essentially states that you put a 10-foot wall in front of the entire pavilion, it's not going to prevent the neighborhood from flooding because the water is going to come in from elsewhere. And I invite members of the Board of Selectmen, as well as any members of the RTM, over to my house any day of the week during daylight hours, and I'll take you in my family room or anywhere in the house because it all looks out over the pavilion, and I can show you where during Sandy, during Irene, during Hurricane Gloria, where the water came from, and it did not come from in front of the pavilion. It came from up near the tennis club, and in Sandy's case, it just came from everywhere. I have a concern. I mentioned a concern to the RTM. Also, one last thing, sorry. I'm also a former member of the Penfield Building Committee, and I was pretty much the sole objector to what was built because the town members of Fairfield who had responded in writing as well as voice to surveys that then Selectmen Tetra had sent out by an overwhelming majority of 3-1 wanted a smaller, less expensive pavilion. Unfortunately, that turned into a political football, in my opinion, as did unfortunately the last remake of 2023. All due respect to former select person Brenda Kupchak. So the political football continues. So my question, I'm not allowed to ask a question, so I'm going to have a few statements. Number one, I'm a little concerned, knowing how deep in FEMA work, and I'm certainly no expert, that and obviously living across the street, I'm very sensitive to us being able to get that beach level back up again. But I'm very concerned knowing how deep and FEMA and other governmental agencies operate, that if we were to do what has been suggested and build it back up, that at some point in time in the future, whether it's immediately after we do the rebuild of the pavilion and the beach, or 2 years later, that some governmental agency like FEMA or DEEP or a state agency might come through and say, you know, you were supposed to be at 8 feet, now you're at 11. And then we wind up with some other type of notice of violation or some other type of threatening position that the government agencies take that affects our flood insurance for those of us who live in that area. And we desperately need flood insurance to be as low as it is because it's very high. So I'm really concerned, and I'm just voicing my opinion about kind of a warning that we explore every legal option with every governmental agency and have it in writing to make sure that if we do what we're planning on doing, that no one can come back to us, whether it's 6 months or 6 years later, and say that we've now violated what we have to do as a beach community. So that's a big concern, probably first and foremost. Just for the record, some numbers were thrown out. By the way, I have this, and I'm happy to present this to the Board of Selectmen or any town official. The option that the town of Fairfield residents wanted on a vote of 3-1, which was not what was built, was what was called option number 9, which was a smaller, much less expensive pavilion. And in any discussion group, including one that was held down in the beach area in 2023, the same points were raised. People wanted a smaller, less expensive pavilion. We may not be able to do that now. I certainly understand that. But I just want to go on record once again that the voting public in the town of Fairfield wanted a smaller, less expensive pavilion, not the giant pavilion that's there now. And this can be done, these are the architect's renderings, this can be done for a significantly lower amount than the amount that were proposed to spend. So there were a couple of numbers that were thrown around. One with respect to loss of revenue in several presentations. And again, all due respect to former Selectwoman Kupchik, during a presentation that was done in 2023, some numbers were mentioned about if we were to knock down the pavilion, we would lose all the revenue, and it was almost, and the numbers that were given out were 400,000, which was very close. I've gone through the town budget extensively, $370,000 in revenue each year. Unfortunately, what was not mentioned right after that were the expenses. When you subtract the expenses of running the pavilion from the gross revenue, you're left with a net profit of between $100,000 and $150,000 per year, approximately. So if we spend another $13 million on this building, we will have a building that is now approximately $26 million. And we're getting somewhere, let's call it even $250,000 a year in revenue, which is almost twice what we're getting now. It doesn't take a calculator to figure out your payback is 100 years. So 2 sayings that I would like to throw out for this board and for the public. 2 sayings that we hear about all the time. Number 1, does it make sense to throw good money after bad? And number 2, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So fortifying the pavilion, doing all the things that make sense. And if you recall way back to the Penfield Building Committee, there was a town resident who was very vocal about using helical piles. I think it was the expense issue that was shooting it down at that point. But now we're back to helical piles. But we're essentially doing the same thing. We're rebuilding this monster building, even though we're doing it right, according to what all the engineers and architects are saying. The last saying is, you can't fool Mother Nature. And we don't know that 2 years from now or 20 years from now, we're going to be facing another rebuild. Thank you.
Hi, it's Alyssa Israel. I'm back via phone.
Okay, Alyssa, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry I had trouble unmuting and I can't get my video going. So I would like to agree wholeheartedly with Ian Bass. I feel that this is way too huge of an expenditure, and I've felt this way since the original building, the second building committee that Ian served on. It's getting ridiculous. It has been ridiculous for the past 8 years, haggling with FEMA over this ridiculous NOV, and it's ridiculous. And I've read piles of papers, and there are people at the state, such as Dana Conover, who don't agree with FEMA at all, and he's the liaison at Connecticut DEMIS with FEMA, and he wrote a 9-page letter explaining how FEMA is totally out of line, but we won't go there now. What we can do at this point is take down the event hall. And I want to be clear that the NOVs are about the event hall, not the east and west wing. So if we took down that section, and we're only talking about that section of the building, that's all we have to do to solve the NOV. And my understanding is we can leave the dune. And the dune, I think, is at least at 12 feet elevation at this point. And I can tell you, unfortunately, I don't have video, but I have an elevation map from the 1960s that's on MetroCog's website that shows that the elevation in the 60s was 10 feet on the parking lot side of the pavilion. It does show 8 feet on the beach side. So at one point it was 8 feet, but in front of the building, but behind the building on the parking lot, it was never 8 feet. It was 10 feet elevation in the 1960s. So FEMA is crazy. I just can't believe we've spent 8 years haggling with them over this insanity. If those grade beams are removed and the dune is carved out, as Devin Santa said, and this is what Rick Grauer has been saying all along, there's going to be a funneling effect under the building. And now you have no dune and no great horizontal grade beams, which I have in my house. I can't imagine if someone asked me to take out my horizontal steel beams out of my house and said, well, just balance your house on some pilings. And then you create a funnel effect underneath the building. What's going to happen to that building? The water's going to fly through, which it did during Sandy, at high velocity under the building, and it's going to destabilize it. So, like Ian said, we just keep doing the same thing. And I really don't want to spend $13 million on a building that is going to fail. And it's crazy. Thank you.
Any other comments? Dick Machowski.
I'm Dick Mahosky. I live at 241 Colonial Drive. I'm also secretary of the Flood and Erosion Control Board. I will testify that Ian Bass was the minority voice in many of the Penfield building committee meetings. Ian, you did forget one additional old saw. Only I knew then what I know now, that things would be different, but here we are. I would like to request that the presentation that Race gave be made available to the public because it was not in the backup for this meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Absolutely. Any other comments? Becky?
Can I speak a second time?
Yeah.
Who's all you get?
I know we had originally looked at this, I think before, to see whether there's any possibility of getting any insurance from some of the engineers that recommended the grade beams be at the place they were originally. Is it possible to go back and re-examine that issue to see whether we can some of this building, this new building, by asking the insurance companies of those engineers and contractors that did the work the first time to cover some of the costs because of their recommendations. I don't know if there is any option, but.
So any other comments? Okay, this isn't a voting item. I just want to make a couple of comments. One is the initial grade beams were put in, and the analysis that it was done incorrectly the first time around, or would be not a normal or recommended approach, and would be risky. The building didn't collapse, so the town, and it was a long time ago. It was, was it 10 years ago? So I think we have issues with, it's just been a really long time, and I think some of the liability for that, most of it, there's just no way, according to our attorneys, that should have been. Had we known, had we had that feedback, maybe we would have pursued that, some years ago. The most recent change was discovered before any work was done, so I think the belief is that there really is no liability on the part of the people that recommended the work to recreate the grade beams below at 8 feet, because it never happened, and that now we have a helical pile land. So it seems like have asked that question, and it's highly unlikely, but we may be pursuing more, at least researching that a little more carefully. The other thing I'd like to say is the issue of I totally agree. It's really important to build that beach back up, but that beach is going to 8 feet. I understand it's frustrating, and no one really understands why. I'm sure FEMA has their reasons, I guess, but it's going to 8 feet whether we tear the building down or leave it there. That beach between the two dunes is going to 8 feet. And if we want to build it back up to 11 feet, we're going to have to go through zoning, and DEEP will have to be consulted. So that I don't believe that will change either way. So we just have to do that. And that's really all I have to say on that. We should probably move on to the final item. Any other comments? Okay, let's move to the last item. So this item I'm going to propose, we have to propose an amendment to this item. Okay, but I'm going to read the initial. Item. Penfield Pavilion, item 13. Penfield Pavilion requires Board of Finance and RTM approval to hear, consider, and act upon a resolution entitled "A Resolution Appropriating an Additional $1,380,000 for costs related to construction, remediation, and addressing the notices of violation of Penfield Pavilion." See full resolution contained in the backup materials. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, so moved. Second that?
Okay, I just want to make the comment that this item is the amount is incorrect, because the contingency that was calculated was based on the original estimate of 11.6 million, and I suggested that we do it off of the full amount. So the 1,380 should be 1,429,950. So I'd like to propose an amendment to adjust the 1,380,000 to 1,429,950. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Any comment?
I would say that I think it's very smart because, as we've said right from the beginning, that we really aren't, we're never really sure exactly how much soil is under that thing. We have estimates based on invoices, but the people who wrote those invoices may not have been.
accurate. So it's really smart to have the extra contingency.
Yep, yep. And I'd like to thank Eli for bringing that to my attention. Christine?
Just in terms of, thank you for just the backup. In terms of the FEMA cap, are we, the cost is increasing for this project. Are we still, within our limit in terms of the 50-50?
We are still well within the limit. I don't know, Eli, do you want to speak to that?
Sure.
Yeah, you prepared?
Yeah. So with the current bids, after we got bids, we went out and separated the 5 line items that include the 50-50. And we are below our goal. Our goal was to stay below 3 million. We're at 2.7 million. And our overall cap is 3.6. We have a shelter of close to 900,000.
Thank you.
Okay.
And maybe it's worth adding that 3.6 cap, the valuation for Enfield was seen and agreed by FEMA. So I don't think that is a question on the table. So the 3.6 seems to be a very solid number. Any other comment? Ms. Vitale?
Just to some of the comments made in terms of alternatives, we can't go back to decisions made a year ago in terms of what this pavilion might have looked like. I wish that we had more time then to really engage the public and maybe take another survey of whether or not we wanted a smaller structure there. And speaking to some people, I think that there's a lot of people that still want a covered picnic area, still want the lockers, and maybe don't necessarily need a banquet hall. But this project has gone before all 3 town bodies. There is still the concern about homeowners losing their insurance discount if we change from the approved plan. So while totally here and agree with a lot of the comments made today, I will be voting in favor of this so we can get this NOV resolved and move forward with the next steps in terms of fortifying our coastline, because this is just the beginning. And I'm going to thank everyone who took the time to stay with us and give comment.
Thank you.
I think I'd like to take another.
Can I ask a comment?
Sure, good.
So I just want to say I appreciate you bringing that up. And listen, this was no easy thing to deal with over the last several years. It wasn't anything I would have liked to have had to deal with. But to some comments made, Ian's comment, I was a state rep back then, going to those meetings. There was a holy war fight over that pavilion. It was unbelievable. Those meetings were packed to the gills. Everyone in the town was arguing. It was really divisive and horrible. And then it just kept going on. And frankly, when the NOV became uncovered, when the appeal was denied and FEMA said, okay, you're done. And frankly, they were tired of the town. And so there wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room. And I just, honestly, there were so many things going on with the town. And I just felt like, after giving all the information, all the details, all the specs, all the studies, all the everything, and the numbers, it just made sense to just maintain the building and not put our community through another. And it was like 4.5 years of arguing, building committees, meetings, arguing, surveys. I mean, at some point in time, surveys are great, but you have to take the information at some point in time and lead and just move forward with things. And to your point, three town bodies approved it. There was a ton of information provided. And I feel like we've been talking about Penfield in this town for like 20 years. I mean, we have so many other things to talk about. And that, to your point, focusing on resiliency. That's what we should be. Move through this NOV, get it out of the way, and start talking about how we can fortify our beach and make it more resilient and what those costs will be. So thank you for bringing those points up. I know it's a frustrating thing and not everybody always agrees. And sometimes you just have to move forward and get things done.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I want to make one final point. The $13 million number, some of that, a fairly big chunk of that will not go away, even if we knock the building down and move everything away. So, I think about 4 million of that is just soil remediation.
Just the excavation.
Just the excavation, and then, part of, there would be an additional amount for demolishing and taking the building, removing it. I think that was probably a couple million. I can't remember exactly. So, we're talking about closer to 7 million that we might be able to avoid spending. And if we were to build something else there, I assume that's going to cost, several million. So the difference isn't 13 million or zero. It's more like 13 million and probably at least 6 million with nothing there and several million more with something there. And so I wanted to set that thinking a little bit straight. I don't think I'm incorrect on that, but it's rough numbers. I mean, the other thing I want to make sure everyone knows, and I think it's already been brought up maybe by Selectman Kupchak. I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but we don't know. What we do know now with our guaranteed minimum, our GMP bids, is that we should not have an escalation in costs over the construction piece of it unless something that we want changes. But the soil remediation part of it is still an estimate. And of course, like I just said, we have to get rid of that soil no matter what. So if we dig down, and again, thank you, Eli, for educating me on this. If we dig down 6 feet and we find 2 more feet that has to be remediated, it's going to cost more. So part of that hopefully would be we could absorb that in contingency, but that is really still the major unknown at this point. And the third thing is we had an issue getting project insurance on this project, but we do have project insurance now. It was probably over twice as much as we expected it to cost, which kind of makes sense because it was a very risky project, but at least we're covered from the project standpoint. Okay, I'm ready to vote. Any other comments? Any comments from, Laura Devlin.
Laura Devlin, 85 Brett Lane in Fairfield. I want to thank you for including this item on today's agenda. It is so important that our town is kept abreast of this. I don't know who in this room was at that contentious meeting back, I think it was at Ludlow High School. There were 9 scenarios that were presented. One of the most contentious aspects of it had to do with the discussion about the construction the first time the building was built and was fairly destroyed by whatever storm that was at the time. And I remember the building project engineers that had been hired to do this in complete disagreement with the town's position, which was that somebody in the town had built a barrier wall in front of Penfield Pavilion. And what that did was actually exacerbated the flooding in the beach area, because as the water came up, it got caught behind that wall. It swirled around and destroyed the footings, and the water went in, but it couldn't get back out. So then it was rebuilt, and now it's been rebuilt with contaminated fill that is costing, as you've talked about, how many millions of dollars to remediate from what we know so far. And hopefully it is not going to be any deeper. And I think as this project moves forward, whether or not survey said this aspect or this out of the 9, there wasn't ever a vote taken or brought to a resolution. And maybe at some point in the future, God forbid this ever happens again, that can happen. But I think we've gone through so many mistakes that have been taken Again, I just want to thank you for bringing this up, for sharing the work that you have done. And I just ask that because of the magnitude of the cost and the horrible history that this project has, that you continue to keep us very much informed, and that hopefully the project will move ahead very, very smoothly. So thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, everyone, for sticking it out. Sorry it took so long, but I think it was, oh, gosh. Item number 14, refunds tax collector. Consider an act upon tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector in the amount of $6,968.81. May I have a motion? Okay, I'm in favor. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Unanimous. Item number 15, to hear, consider, and act upon any other business which shall properly come before this meeting. Anything? Oh, yes. I would like to introduce our new communications director named Lisa Claire. Lisa, would you just come up and say a few words? Lisa's working part-time for the town of Fairfield and will be in charge of, actually, I'll let you talk about what you're
in charge of. Okay. So I have embarked upon my second week here on staff, and I can tell you that I am a resident of town for 28 years, and I am deeply, deeply impressed with the commitment, the talent, and the dedication shown not just by the staff here in Town Hall and Independence Hall, but also by the elected officials and the residents. It absolutely blows me away, and I am so honored to be part of a really dynamic team. What I will be responsible for is basically internal and external communications from the First Selectman's office. So that will include our e-newsletter, which goes out every other week, any additional news that Bill feels necessary to disseminate to the public, press, talking to the press, answering press calls, arranging press releases as necessary outside of those areas in Town Hall where in the town where people have already done their own kind of press initiatives. Happy to meet with everybody. I'm so happy with the people I've met so far, looking forward to making any kind of contribution that I can. And I love my town. I've been here 28 years, like I said, raised my kids here. And this is a new adventure for me to contribute to the workings of town government.
Thanks, Lisa. And I would just say to the press, I think several have already met Lisa, and people who have, events coming up they'd like us to know about, they should send those, or any, ceremonies or anything like that we might not know about, please send them to Lisa and keep her informed. Any other items?
Welcome aboard. I would just like to note, though, I don't think the town ever had a communications director. Typically, the chief of staff and the first select person handle communications. So I'd just be a little bit more interested if you should send the job description and the salary information to the board so we can understand better how you're organizing your office.
Sure. It's anything else?
Just want to wish everybody a happy new year. I hope everyone had a nice holiday. A new year, new beginning, and looking forward to all that we're going to accomplish together this year. So hope everyone had a great holiday, and if no one else has anything else to say, I'll be happy to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Thank you. Happy New Year.
You too.